The night was thick with an otherworldly chill as the moon carved pale paths through the skeletal branches of a long-forgotten forest. In a remote corner of the northern wilderness, where the frozen lake lay like a mirror of ice and silence, Marina arrived at a secluded cabin to visit her estranged uncle. The cabin, tucked away among whispering pines and frost-laden evergreens, had long been a place of whispered legends and uneasy histories. Although the warmth of family was meant to bring comfort, the tales carried on the bitter wind stirred something inexplicable within her. Marina had grown up hearing hushed rumors from local villagers about a strange, malevolent presence that haunted these woods. They spoke of a creature, a demon of the deep, a phantom that mimicked the voices of lost loved ones, to lure unsuspecting wanderers into the deadly embrace of the winter wilderness. The stories, half forgotten and spoken in trembling tones by firesides, painted the creature in terrifying hues, gaunt, with eyes that burned like distant embers in the pitch black, and a voice that was at once eerily familiar and disconcertingly alien. Still, the lure of mystery and a desire for connection with her past had drawn Marina to this isolated place. Despite the warnings echoing in her mind, the first night at the cabin was unsettling. While the wind howled like a chorus of sorrowful spirits outside, Marina tried to settle into a restless sleep. Every creak of the old wooden walls, every sigh of the wind through the barren branches, made her pulse quicken. In the deep silence between the howls of the storm, a sound emerged, a cry so faint it could have been imagined. It was a plaintive call that pierced the stillness of midnight, resembling the desperate cry of a long-lost relative. The sound beckoned to her, tugging at memories of childhood comfort and familial bonds. Heart-pounding, she rose from her thin blanket and, with a mix of trepidation and resolve, decided to investigate. Outside, the frozen ground crunched underfoot as she made her way toward the distant source of the cry. The beams of her flashlight sliced through the oppressive darkness, illuminating nothing more than swirling snow and gnarled trees. The wind carried the faint, mournful sound, an eerie, disembodied wail that sent shivers crawling up her spine. With each step, the sound grew louder, drawing her deeper into the forest where the boundary between reality and nightmare began to blur. As Marina pressed forward, the beam of light revealed scattered footprints in the fresh snow, prints that did not belong to any human. They meandered away from the cabin, disappearing into the dense heart of the forest. The prints were erratic, as if made by a creature whose gait was uncertain, at times clumsy and at others unnervingly deliberate. The chill in her blood deepened. It was then that the realization struck her with cold clarity. The cry she had heard was not that of her beloved uncle, lost in the wilderness, but a deceptive echo, a lure crafted by something far more sinister. The wind had grown fiercer, whipping the branches into a frenzied dance and carrying with it the stench of decay. Shadows seemed to writhe and contort in the corners of her vision. And then, in a moment when the world held its breath, she caught a glimpse of movement, a figure that should not exist. From the darkness emerged a creature so gaunt and spectral that it seemed born of the winter itself. Its eyes, burning a fierce, unnatural red, locked onto Marina as if it recognized a long-forgotten secret. The voice that reached her ears was disarmingly familiar, a sound that might have once belonged to a cherished family member, now warped into something otherworldly and cruel. Frozen in terror, Marina's mind raced as the creature advanced. It moved with a lurching gait, each step punctuated by an unsettling blend of hunger and cunning. The creature's presence was an assault on every sense. The acrid smell of its breath mingled with the biting cold of the night. And its voice, a ghostly mimicry of a loved one, spoke her name in a tone both seductive and repellent. Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet a strange compulsion held her in place, as if the very fabric of her being was entwined with the sinister melody of the creature's call. The forest seemed to come alive with malevolent intent. As Marina struggled to regain her composure, the creature lunged forward, its skeletal hands reaching out with a desperate ferocity. Panic surged through her veins, and she turned to flee, stumbling through the snow-dusted undergrowth. Branches clawed at her face, and the slippery ice beneath her feet threatened to send her plummeting into hidden crevices. In one harrowing moment, she nearly fell into a yawning fissure in the frozen lake's edge, a silent grave waiting beneath the veneer of ice. The Wendigo, if that was indeed what it was relentless in its pursuit. its presence like a dark specter haunting every step of her desperate escape. Marina's flight was chaotic and instinctual. With every turn, she sought refuge among the twisted brush and the sheltering boughs of ancient pines. The creature's pursuit was relentless. It seemed to vanish and reappear with each gust of wind. Its eerie, half-familiar calls rang in her ears, a maddening reminder of the peril that stalked her every move. The forest around her was transformed into a labyrinth of fear, a maze where every shadow could conceal unspeakable horror. And every rustle in the wind might herald the approach of a predator born of nightmare. As she ran, fragments of memories mingled with the present, recollections of cozy evenings by the fire, the warmth of familial laughter, and the safety of home, all now turned bitter by the chill of betrayal from the dark unknown. Each moment of terror was underscored by a grim realization. The warnings of the villagers were no mere folklore but dire omens of an ancient curse that had been awakened. It was not simply a tale to frighten children, but a grim reality etched into the very ice and snow of the region. In the depths of the forest, as the night deepened to a near absolute darkness, Marina's thoughts became a blur of fear and determination. She could not allow herself to succumb to the terror that had seeped into her bones. Somewhere deep within her lay a spark of resolve, a knowledge that her survival depended not just on her ability to outrun the creature, but on her capacity to outthink it. With every desperate step, she began to strategize, to seek out natural refuges, and to use the very landscape against the beast. Her mind raced back to the old tales of cunning heroes and resourceful villagers who had once vanquished horrors far worse than any mere animal. Perhaps, if she could remain calm enough, she might recall some of the wisdom that had been passed down through generations. The forest itself seemed to resist her escape. Twisted roots and fallen logs conspired to trip her up, while the ceaseless howl of the wind created a disorienting symphony of sound. The creature, meanwhile, moved like a wraith among the trees, its every movement an unnerving reminder of the unnatural hunger that drove it. The interplay of light and shadow created a shifting tapestry of terror, where every rustle and every glimmer of movement was suspect. Marina's heart pounded in her ears as she ducked behind a particularly dense thicket, her breath coming in ragged gasps. In that fraught moment of stillness, she listened to the erratic rhythm of her own pulse, the near-silent pad of the creature's feet on the snow, and the mournful whisper of the wind through the branches. Time lost all meaning in that oppressive darkness. Each second stretched into an eternity of fear and uncertainty. The creature's voice, half a siren song, half a menacing growl, continued to echo in the cavernous silence of the forest. Its words were indecipherable, yet they resonated with an uncanny familiarity that tugged at the corners of Marina's memory. It was as if the creature was reciting fragments of lullabies and old family secrets, only to distort them into a chant of dread. The line between memory and nightmare blurred, and Marina found herself questioning every sound and shadow that danced at the edge of her vision. At length, as the night began its slow procession toward the uncertain promise of dawn, Marina's frantic escape led her to a narrow copse of trees that offered a fragile semblance of shelter. Huddled among the frost-bitten undergrowth, she allowed herself a moment to catch her breath and gather her scattered thoughts. The realization of how close she had come to succumbing to the abyss, a dark, icy chasm that seemed ready to swallow her whole, sent fresh waves of terror through her body. Yet even in that moment of despair, a glimmer of determination sparked in her eyes. She would not become another victim of the cursed call in the night. The forest, as if acknowledging her silent vow, fell into a deceptive stillness. In that fragile calm, Marina's thoughts drifted to the legends of the Wendigo, a creature from ancient lore said to be driven by an insatiable hunger for human life. Doomed to wander the winter wastes in search of fresh prey, the notion chilled her more than the biting cold of the wind. Could it be that the stories were more than mere superstition? Was this creature, this horrifying embodiment of ancient malice, truly stalking her in the frozen dark? The possibility was almost too much to bear. In the hush of the cold pre-dawn hours, as the sky began to hint at a return of light, Marina resolved that she must not only survive the night but also unravel the mystery that had ensnared her. Every frozen branch, every whisper of wind now spoke of an ancient curse and a hidden truth that needed to be uncovered. With trembling hands, she clutched a small keepsake, a locket containing a faded photograph of her family, a tangible reminder of who she was fighting for. It was a silent promise to herself, to defy the dark legends and return with the truth. Even if it meant facing the abyss of her own fear. Even as she sat there in her makeshift refuge, every sense alert and every nerve on edge, Marina knew that the night was far from over. The terror that had stalked her footsteps in the forest would not easily be banished by the coming light. The call that had lured her so deeply into the night was only the beginning of a far more sinister tale, one woven into the very fabric of the land and whispered through generations. The secrets of the forest, hidden beneath layers of ice and snow, were waiting to be revealed. And as the first feeble light of dawn began to break through the darkness, Marina understood that her journey was just beginning, a journey that would test the limits of her courage, unravel the mysteries of a haunted wilderness, and confront the monstrous legacy of the Wendigo. In that delicate moment between night and day, with frost clinging to her lashes and determination burning in her eyes, Marina vowed that she would not be consumed by the darkness. The ghostly echoes of the creature's call still haunted the silent air, a chilling reminder that the night's terrors were far from vanquished. And though the forest remained cloaked in a deceptive calm, the promise of further horror lay in wait, lurking behind every frozen bough, in every shadow cast by the emerging light. Thus, as the pale hues of early morning slowly chased away the oppressive darkness, Marina gathered her strength and prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The secrets of the night, the unholy, bloodthirsty presence that had stalked her, the ancient curse of the Wendigo, would not remain hidden for long. And so, with the first tentative steps of dawn, she embarked on a journey into a world where every sound might conceal danger, every shadow might hide a monster, and the call in the night would forever echo as a warning: never wander alone into the embrace of a haunted forest. The first rays of dawn found Marina emerging from the fragile cocoon of her makeshift refuge, her body trembling from both the chill of the night and the echo of unspeakable terror. As the weak light of morning crept through the dense canopy of frost-laden pines, every detail of the forest was rendered in an eerie clarity. The once menacing shadows now lay broken and scattered across the snow. Yet their memory clung to her like a shroud. Even in daylight, the remnants of that cursed night pressed upon her mind, a relentless reminder that some horrors do not fade with the rising sun. Marina's breath came in visible puffs as she stepped gingerly over frozen ground, her senses still heightened by the desperate flight of the previous hours. The footprints, those distorted imprints that had first led her into the depths of the forest, were now partially obscured by a fresh blanket of drifting snow. Each step seemed to whisper caution, urging her to turn back. Yet the unyielding determination within her propelled her forward. She had to know what lay behind those mysterious tracks. Had they been made by a mere animal lost in the winter? Or was it truly the terrible harbinger of ancient legend, a creature whose very name was spoken in fearful, hushed tones among the locals? The forest itself appeared transformed by the early light. The bitter wind had subsided into a softer murmur, and the silence of the woods was punctuated only by the occasional creak of ice and the distant call of a lone bird. Yet, beneath this deceptive calm, Marina could feel the pulse of something dark and old stirring in the hidden recesses of the trees. Her mind, still reeling from the horrifying encounter, raced with conflicting thoughts, dread intermingled with a strange, almost primal, curiosity. She recalled the half-whispered legends told by the villagers. The stories of a creature that lured wanderers with voices so familiar that they were rendered helpless by grief and longing. Driven by both fear and an insatiable need for answers, Marina began to trace the narrow, winding trail of prints. Her footsteps were careful, each one measured as though she were trying to avoid waking an ancient spirit that slumbered beneath the snow. The forest, with its labyrinth of towering trees and gnarled branches, seemed to watch her silently, as if it were a living testament to the many souls it had claimed over the years. Every rustle in the undergrowth and every distant snap of a twig set her heart pounding, echoing the frantic beat that had kept her awake through the long, perilous night. As she ventured deeper, the land around her grew increasingly rugged. The trees, older and more twisted here, formed a natural archway that beckoned her into a realm where time appeared to have lost all meaning. The frozen lake, which had served as both a mirror and a trap the night before, loomed ahead like a vast expanse of glass, its surface broken only by the jagged scars of cracks and the occasional ripple stirred by a hidden current. The sight of it filled her with a mix of awe and trepidation. For she knew that beneath its serene exterior lay the same treacherous depths that had nearly claimed her life. A soft crunch underfoot made her pause. The sound was deliberate, measured, a series of tiny imprints that seemed too orderly to be the random treading of an animal. With cautious steps, she followed the trail, which led her along the lake's frozen shore. The scene that unfolded before her eyes was one of eerie desolation, a scattering of footprints that veered off toward the dense stands of evergreen, disappearing into a swirl of white mist. It was here that Marina's thoughts turned toward the legends again. The villagers spoke of a spectral lure, a sound that mimicked a loved one's cry, drawing unsuspecting souls deep into the clutches of the forest, never to return. The forest air was now punctuated by subtle hints of decay and an inexplicable scent of old wood and damp earth, a scent that seemed both natural and disturbingly out of place. Marina's heart sank as she recalled the creature's half-familiar call, a sound that had morphed the comforting voice of her family into a siren of despair. Her fingers tightened around the small locket clutched in her hand, its cool metal a reminder of her identity and the life she had once known. Every step she took was a defiant act of rebellion against the darkness that sought to erase her. As she moved forward, the forest began to reveal secrets that had lain dormant for generations. Broken branches and scattered remnants of what might once have been a campsite hinted at the presence of others who had dared to wander these lands. In a small clearing beside a weathered birch tree, Marina discovered a faded piece of cloth, its once vibrant colors now dulled by time and the relentless assault of winter. It was a silent testimony to past encounters with the unknown, a relic left behind by a soul who had once faced the same terror that now haunted her dreams. For a long moment, she knelt and examined the cloth, her mind awash with questions. Who had left this token behind? Had they survived the ordeal? Or had they fallen victim to the same curse that seemed to plague the woods? The chill of the morning air mingled with the chill of uncertainty that coursed through her veins. Determination replaced fear as she pocketed the scrap, vowing to carry its story with her, to weave it into the tapestry of evidence that might one day expose the true nature of the forest's malevolence. The further she advanced, the more palpable the sense of being watched became. It was as if the very trees themselves were sentinels, silently observing her every move. The forest was a living, breathing enigma, its silence as heavy as the weight of forgotten memories. Occasionally, a glint of something metallic caught her eye amid the underbrush, a shard of broken mirror, perhaps, or a piece of old jewelry. Each discovery deepened the mystery, suggesting that the forest had been a stage for countless dramas, tragedies, and possibly even acts of courage that had been lost to time. Marina's thoughts drifted to the villagers, whose cautious warnings now seemed to bear the weight of grim reality. She recalled the anxious glances, the trembling voices, and the furtive whispers about a creature that was part myth, part nightmare. The Wendigo, they had said, was not simply a legend but an embodiment of a hunger that transcended human understanding, a force of nature that preyed on the weak and the lost. Even as the rational part of her mind fought against the pull of superstition, every fiber of her being acknowledged that the forest held secrets that defied simple explanation. With each passing moment, the forest revealed more of its haunting beauty, a beauty tinged with sorrow and danger. The interplay of light and shadow cast intricate patterns upon the snow, reminiscent of delicate lacework that concealed as much as it revealed. The gentle murmur of a nearby brook, partially frozen yet still trickling along its bed, provided a counterpoint to the silence, a soft, persistent heartbeat amid the frozen stillness. It was in these quiet moments, when nature itself seemed to pause and listen, that Marina felt the heavy weight of destiny pressing upon her. Deep in thought, she almost didn't notice the subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sudden, inexplicable chill that ran down her spine, as if the forest were exhaling a cold breath. The whisper of a voice, barely audible above the rustle of the wind, reached her ears. It was a soft, mournful sound, indistinguishable from the sigh of the wind through brittle leaves. Yet it carried an unmistakable hint of longing. Her pulse quickened. Was it merely the echo of her own fears? Or was it another lure from the depths of this haunted wilderness? A rustling behind a cluster of frost-covered ferns made her spin around, the beam of her flashlight slicing through the undergrowth. For a moment, the forest held its breath with her, the silence stretching into a fragile suspension of time. Then, almost imperceptibly, a figure began to materialize at the edge of her vision. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace, a figure wrapped in layers of tattered clothing that seemed to blend seamlessly with the muted palette of winter. The sight of this solitary wanderer set her heart racing anew, for it was the first sign of another human presence in this desolate expanse. Tentatively, Marina called out, her voice barely a whisper carried away by the gentle morning breeze. "Hello? Is someone there?" Her words hung in the air, fragile and tentative, as she strained to catch any response. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the lake. Then, as if drawn by the sound of her voice, the figure stepped forward. The stranger's face was obscured by a heavy. Marina's pulse still thundered in her ears as the stranger slowly stepped into the weak light. His features partially revealed beneath the heavy scarf and wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. His eyes, however, shone with a depth of sorrow and a kind of fierce determination that made Marina hesitate between relief and renewed dread. The silence of the ruined chapel pressed in around them like a shroud, each echo of their footsteps amplifying the enormity of the moment. Without a word, the stranger extended a hand, the rough calluses on his palm belying years spent in these unforgiving woods. His presence was both enigmatic and grounding, a beacon amid the swirling uncertainties that now defined Marina's existence. "I've been wandering these cursed paths far longer than most dared to tread," he finally said in a voice that carried both the weight of sorrow and a quiet resilience. "Call me Eamon. I know these woods, their secrets, and the price that must be paid to appease the darkness." Marina's eyes darted from the shadowed outline of his face to the remnants of the ancient altar before her, where the tokens of her past had been laid in silent supplication. The locket, the mirror shard, and the tattered scrap of cloth now pulsed with an almost sentient energy in the gentle glow of the incantation's aftermath. I don't understand," she stammered, still reeling from the overwhelming surge of both fear and inexplicable hope that had filled the chapel. "I thought I was just trying to find answers, but it seems I've stepped into a legacy of curses and sacrifices that stretches back through time." Eamon's gaze softened as he regarded her, his voice hushed as if speaking in reverence to the past. "These woods have long been the stage for both horror and redemption," he explained. "The legends of the Wendigo are not merely tales spun to frighten children. They are the anguished whispers of souls who once dared to challenge the darkness. Our ancestors made pacts here, bargaining with the forces of nature and the spirits of the lost, hoping to contain a hunger that even time could not quell." As the wind outside began to pick up once more, a low murmur echoed among the trees, as if the forest itself was engaged in a timeless conversation. Eamon led Marina away from the altar and toward a narrow corridor of stone that wound deeper into the ruined sanctuary. Every step revealed more of the chapel's hidden history, faded murals depicting somber faces and desperate pleas, fragmented inscriptions carved into weathered stone, and long-forgotten relics half buried beneath layers of dust and ice. In each of these silent vestiges lay the echo of sacrifices past, a reminder that every light, however small, had once fought to overcome a darkness that threatened to consume everything. Together, they reached a small antechamber where the cold air was punctuated by the scent of old incense and the faint, almost imperceptible, whisper of ancient prayers. Eamon paused, running his hand along the smooth surface of a broken pillar, his eyes distant as though recalling memories not his own. "I've seen many like you," he murmured, "people driven by a loss, by the desperate need for truth. They come here with hearts burdened by grief, only to find that the path to salvation is paved with both beauty and horror." Marina's mind swirled with questions. How could these relics, her locket, the mirror shard, and the scrap of cloth, hold such transformative power? What exactly had she awakened by daring to recite those archaic words? Her thoughts returned, as if on cue, to the moment when the ancient incantation had awakened a light so fierce it had forced the Wendigo into a final, agonized cry. Even as the memory sent shivers down her spine, it also kindled a spark of determination deep within her. "Then what do we do now?" she asked softly. How do we ensure that the darkness remains at bay once more? Amon's reply was measured, laced with the certainty of hard-earned experience. The ritual you initiated binds us to the ancient power of this land. But binding such a force is only the first step. To truly hold the curse at bay, we must travel to the heart of the forest, to the ancient chapel where the first covenant was made. There, we will find the final relic, a token lost to time, imbued with the essence of those who first dared to challenge the night. Outside, the forest had shifted once again. The dawn's fragile light had given way to a cold, unyielding morning, yet the woods still exuded a haunting atmosphere that belied the appearance of day. The trees, towering and ancient, formed a labyrinthine canopy overhead, their branches intertwining like the threads of fate. In the distance, the frozen lake stretched out like a vast, glistening expanse of glass, its surface scarred by the remnants of last night's chaos. Every element of the landscape whispered a tale of both despair and resilience, a reminder that nature itself was a living chronicle of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. With a cautious nod, Marina clutched the locket close to her heart. "I understand," she said, her voice resolute despite the tremor of uncertainty in its tone. "If this is what must be done, then I am ready to face whatever awaits us. I refuse to let the darkness claim another soul. Not when there is still hope." Amon smiled faintly, a gesture that spoke of both empathy and the harsh lessons of a lifetime spent amidst haunted legends. "Hope is the one thing these cursed woods cannot ever fully extinguish," he said quietly. "It is the light that guides us through even the most impenetrable night. Come, we must press on. There is little time before the forest awakens anew, and the shadows grow long once more." The two of them stepped out into the frigid air, leaving behind the sanctum of the ruined chapel with its secrets and the promise of redemption etched in every stone. As they made their way along a narrow path winding through towering pines and frost-bitten undergrowth, the forest seemed to come alive around them. The whispering wind carried the voices of the past, murmurs of lost souls, echoes of ancient rituals, and the quiet, persistent heartbeat of nature itself. Each step they took was both a descent into darkness and an ascent toward the light of a new understanding. For hours they trekked through the wilderness, the silence punctuated by the crunch of snow underfoot and the distant, mournful cry of a lone bird. The path was treacherous, a series of narrow ledges, slippery ice, and hidden crevices that threatened to engulf them in a fatal embrace at every turn. Yet, amid these dangers, the land revealed its hidden beauty. Crystalline icicles glimmered like delicate sculptures in the early sunlight, and patches of frost-covered wildflowers added a poignant reminder that life persisted even in the harshest of winters. As they traversed a particularly narrow ridge along the edge of a frozen ravine, Amon suddenly halted, raising a gloved hand to signal Marina to stop. Ahead, partially obscured by swirling snow and mist, lay a clearing unlike any they had seen before. At its center stood a ring of ancient, moss-covered stones arranged in a perfect circle. Their surfaces were etched with runes and symbols that pulsed faintly with an inner light, an almost imperceptible glow that suggested a long-dormant power was stirring. "This is it," Amon whispered, his voice a blend of awe and foreboding. "The Circle of Remembrance. It marks the spot where the original covenant was sealed between our ancestors and the forces that govern this land. The final relic is said to be hidden within the heart of this circle, a token of hope and sacrifice that can bind the curse of the Wendigo once and for all." Marina approached the circle with a mixture of trepidation and wonder. The ancient stones exuded a palpable energy, their surfaces worn smooth by the passage of countless seasons yet resilient against the relentless march of time. As she stepped into the circle, a soft hum seemed to rise from the ground, as though the very earth was speaking in an archaic tongue, a language of longing and remembrance. Every step inside the circle deepened the intensity of the experience, and Marina felt as if she were stepping into a sacred memory, one that transcended the boundaries of life and death. Amon knelt beside one of the larger stones, his fingertips gently tracing the worn carvings. "These inscriptions tell the story of a great sacrifice," he murmured. "They speak of love and loss, of a promise made in the face of insurmountable darkness. The relic you already possess, the locket, is part of that promise. Now, we must find the remaining token." The legends mention an object of pure light, once held by a guardian of the old ways, That was lost when the world was still young. Marina's thoughts drifted back to the visions she had experienced during the incantation. The faces of those who had given everything to defy the night. The silent courage of souls long past. With a renewed determination burning in her eyes, she replied, "Then we must search every corner of this circle. I believe the relic is here somewhere, waiting for us to uncover it so that we can finally end this cycle of despair." For what seemed like hours, the two combed the clearing meticulously. The wind whispered through the stones, carrying with it secrets of eras long forgotten, while the light shifted across the runes in patterns both mesmerizing and cryptic. Just as Marina began to doubt their success, her hand brushed against something cool and smooth beneath a pile of fallen leaves and brittle pine needles. With trembling fingers, she unearthed a small, intricately carved object, a pendant, fashioned in the shape of a stylized flame. Its delicate craftsmanship was a stark contrast to the raw, wild beauty of the forest, and it emanated a soft luminescence that seemed to warm the very air around it. In that moment, a surge of understanding flooded Marina's mind. The pendant was more than just an artifact, it was the final key. The last token needed to complete the ancient ritual. Its light spoke of renewal and the unyielding strength of hope, a promise that even in the deepest darkness, a spark could ignite a blaze that banished the night. Eamon's eyes glistened with both relief and a profound sadness as he observed the pendant in her hand. "You have found it," he said softly, "the relic of the Guardian of Light. With this, we can attempt to seal the curse once and for all." Together, they returned to the altar at the ruined chapel, the precious pendant cradled carefully in Marina's palm. The energy in the sacred space surged once more as the relics, the locket, the mirror shard, the scrap of cloth, and now the glowing pendant, were brought together. The ancient altar responded immediately, its carvings flaring with radiant symbols and the very air seeming to hum with an elemental power. With a deep, steadying breath, Marina resumed the incantation, her voice merging with the whispered prayers of the past and the living promise of the relics before her. As the ritual reached its climax, the chamber filled with a brilliant, overwhelming light, a conflagration of hope that pushed back the tendrils of darkness. The echoes of ancient voices rose in a chorus that transcended time, carrying with them the collective will of generations determined to reclaim their future. For one long, suspended moment, Marina and Eamon felt the full force of that unyielding light, a reminder that even the deepest night would eventually give way to dawn. And then, as if in answer to their defiant cry for redemption, the oppressive presence of the Wendigo receded. The haunted remnants of its curse dissolved into the air, leaving behind a silence that was no longer laden with dread but imbued with the quiet promise of healing. The altar's glow dimmed to a soft radiance, the ancient runes settling into a peaceful stillness. Outside, the forest exhaled a sigh of relief as the cold grip of the night slowly loosened, yielding to the gentle caress of a new day. Marina stood there, her heart still racing but her eyes now clear with purpose. She understood that the battle against the darkness was never truly over, that the cycles of hope and despair were as eternal as the turning of the seasons. Yet, in that sacred moment, she felt a renewed strength surge within her, a connection to the deep, indomitable spirit of life that pulsed through every living thing in these ancient woods. With Eamon by her side, she knew that no matter how many nights the cursed call might echo again, the light they had kindled here would forever serve as a beacon of defiance, a reminder that even in the realm of nightmares, hope was a force that could never be truly extinguished. As the first full light of morning bathed the ruined chapel in a soft, forgiving glow, Marina took one final, steadying breath. "We have done what we set out to do," she whispered, not just to Eamon but to the myriad souls who had long suffered in silence. "We have taken a stand against the night." And with that, the promise of a new beginning hung in the crisp air, a promise that the call in the night, as fearsome as it once was, would forever be transformed into a hymn of survival and hope. In the aftermath of the sacred ritual, as the fragile veil between the mortal realm and the ancient curse began to mend, Marina and Eamon found themselves standing at the threshold of a new day, a day that promised both hope and the lingering specter of past horrors. The ruined chapel, once a silent witness to centuries of despair, now radiated a subtle, reassuring warmth as if acknowledging the triumph of light over darkness. For a long, breathless moment, The forest lay in a suspended state. The oppressive chill of the night had receded, replaced by the gentle caress of the morning sun. The snow, kissed by the tender glow of dawn, shimmered with an ethereal brilliance that spoke of renewal and rebirth. Yet beneath this veneer of tranquility, Marina's heart was still heavy with the memory of that final confrontation, a memory that carried both the bitter taste of loss and the sweet promise of deliverance. Marina's thoughts drifted back to the harrowing moments of that last stand. When the Wendigo, that grotesque embodiment of ancient malevolence, had emerged one final time from the shadowed depths, its gaunt figure contorted by centuries of insatiable hunger and despair, its eyes, burning with an unholy fire, had fixed on her, conveying a terror so profound it could strip away hope with a single, soul-chilling gaze. In that desperate moment, when the darkness seemed poised to reclaim its dominion, the relics, the locket, the mirror shard, the scrap of cloth, and the radiant pendant, had converged to unleash a torrent of light that not only repelled the creature but began to shatter the curse that had long gripped these woods. Amon's steady presence had been a silent benediction amid the chaos. As the relic's combined brilliance surged through the chapel, the Wendigo's agonized cry had blended with the sound of ancient incantations, a sorrowful yet defiant chorus that resonated through the very bones of the forest. The creature's monstrous form had started to fracture, dissolving into a cloud of spectral mist that the rising sun's first rays soon carried away. It was a victory wrought with pain and sacrifice, a victory that bore the heavy cost of confronting one's darkest fears. Now, as the sun ascended higher into a sky washed with soft gold and delicate pinks, Marina and Amon stepped out from the sanctuary of the chapel. The forest, once a labyrinth of despair, now revealed a tender, healing beauty. The towering pines, draped in glistening frost, swayed as if in silent tribute to the victory of light over night. In the distance, the frozen lake, its surface now broken by gentle ripples, mirrored the awakening sky, a vast canvas where nature's scars were slowly being mended. Marina's gaze wandered to the relics resting quietly at the altar, each one a poignant reminder of the night's fierce struggle and the hope that had triumphed. The locket, bearing the faded image of her family, glowed softly as a symbol of unbreakable bonds. The mirror shard, once a fragment of despair, now shimmered with the promise of clarity and truth. The scrap of cloth, imbued with the sacrifices of those who had come before, whispered silently of both loss and renewal. And the pendant, its delicate flame undimmed, pulsed with a radiance that heralded the eternal triumph of hope. In the quiet aftermath, Amon turned to Marina with a voice that was both weary and resolute. "We have witnessed the birth of a new dawn," he said. "Not only have we broken the curse of the Wendigo, but we have also transformed the darkness into a reminder of our resilience. This forest will heal, and its ancient wounds will gradually close, leaving behind the promise of new beginnings." His words, imbued with the wisdom of a lifetime spent in these haunted lands, resonated deeply within her. Together, they retraced the path that had led them through nightmares and into the light. Each careful step was a testament to their survival and an affirmation that life, no matter how fragile, could reclaim its space in the world. The forest, which had long been a realm of whispered terrors, now revealed itself as a tapestry of hidden wonders. The gentle murmur of a brook, its waters partially thawed yet still singing of the winter past, blended with the rustling of leaves, composing a symphony of renewal that promised a future free from the tyranny of ancient curses. As they neared the edge of the woods, the soft silhouettes of a small, resilient village began to emerge. Smoke curled upward from stone chimneys, and the distant sound of laughter and conversation reached their ears, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the haunted forest. The villagers, whose lives had been interwoven with legends and whispered warnings of a cursed call, now greeted Marina and Amon with a mixture of relief and cautious hope. Their eyes, bright with the promise of tomorrow and tempered by the hardships of a long past, shone with gratitude for the news that the curse was lifting. In the days that followed, Marina and Amon became both custodians and storytellers of the forest's ancient legacy. They shared the tale of the cursed call, a tale of a night when the past and present collided, when the voices of lost souls were transformed into a clarion call for redemption. Their words, carried on the winds and inscribed in the hearts of the villagers, served as a beacon for all who had ever faced the darkness. The story of that long, bitter night was not merely a chronicle of horror but also a testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit and the timeless power of hope. On a final, crisp morning as the sun bathed the forest in its gentle light, Marina stood at the edge of the ancient trees. The soft murmur of nature's rebirth surrounded her, a promise that even the deepest shadows could not snuff out the flame of resilience. With the village stretching out before her and the forest standing as both guardian and memory, she made a silent vow to preserve the light that had emerged from the darkest hours and to ensure that the legacy of redemption endured for generations to come. The call in the night, once a harbinger of doom, had been transformed into a resounding hymn of survival, a legacy of sacrifice, courage, and the eternal quest for light in the face of overwhelming darkness. As Marina stepped forward into the promise of a new day, every footprint she left behind was a testament to the journey from despair to hope. A story that would be told and retold as a guiding light for those who might one day wander the edge of darkness.